The silent battle in first class. The first-class cabin thrummed with an air of quiet opulence, a world far removed from the chaos of the terminals below. Reclined in her seat, Sophia Carter, a poised woman in her mid-30s, gazed out the window as the plane idled on the tarmac. The golden hues of sunset reflected off her tailored navy suit, a reminder of the years she had spent building her billion-dollar airline empire from the ground up. For Sophia, this flight was supposed to be a brief respite, a moment to reflect on her accomplishments. Yet, as she adjusted the tray table before her, she couldn't shake the sharp awareness that this would be no ordinary flight. The moment the flight attendant began her rounds, Sophia felt it, a subtle but deliberate oversight. She watched as Karen, the attendant, moved gracefully down the aisle, distributing headphones to every passenger in the cabin. When Karen approached Sophia's row, her expression shifted, her smile tightening into something clipped and practiced. "Excuse me," Sophia said, keeping her tone neutral but firm. "I didn't receive headphones." Karen barely paused, her eyes scanning Sophia with a gaze laced with unspoken judgment. "Those are for first-class passengers," she said, her words curt and dismissive. Sophia felt the sting of the comment, not from the words themselves but from the weight they carried. It wasn't just a casual oversight. It was an intentional act meant to diminish her. For a fleeting moment, Sophia considered letting it slide. After all, she had faced countless microaggressions in her life. Small, insidious reminders that even at the pinnacle of success, she was still judged by the color of her skin. But something in Karen's demeanor, the subtle curl of her lips and the almost imperceptible flick of her eyes, sparked a fire within Sophia. This wasn't just about headphones. It was about respect, something she had worked tirelessly to command, but still had to demand. Sophia's heart raced, but her exterior remained calm. She wasn't just a passenger on this flight. This was her airline, a legacy she had built from countless sleepless nights, calculated risks, and sheer determination. She knew the weight her position carried, and she realized that this was more than just a personal affront. It was a moment to stand up for something greater. The storm within. Sophia remained still, her gaze fixed on the tarmac outside the window as the flight began its ascent. The cabin's serene hum seemed to mock the storm brewing inside her. She clenched the armrests, her perfectly manicured nails pressing into the soft leather as Karen continued her rounds, flashing smiles that felt more calculated than genuine. Her mind was a whirl of thoughts. Every step she had taken to reach this seat, both literally and figuratively, flashed before her eyes. From growing up in a neighborhood where opportunities were scarce to becoming one of the youngest self-made billionaires in history, Sophia had fought battles that most couldn't begin to imagine. But no matter how high she climbed, moments like these reminded her of the societal barriers that refused to crumble entirely. She glanced around the cabin, taking in the other passengers. Most were blissfully unaware of the tension, their heads buried in tablets or reclining in oblivion. A few, however, had noticed. Their furtive glances and raised brows made it clear. They had seen what Karen had done. But no one spoke. No one intervened. The silence was deafening. Sophia's phone buzzed faintly against the tray table, snapping her from her thoughts. She looked down at the device, her reflection staring back at her in the dark screen. For a moment, she considered drafting an email, a measured professional response that outlined the incident in stark detail. It was her usual approach, calculated and controlled. But something stopped her. This wasn't a time for quiet diplomacy. It was a time for action, a calculated resolve. The flight attendant's deliberate behavior didn't stop with the headphones. During the drink service, Karen approached Sophia with a tray of beverages, her movements precise but her expression icy. As she reached over to hand a drink to another passenger, her hand tipped just enough to send a glass of water spilling onto Sophia's lap. Sophia's tailored slacks absorbed the liquid quickly, the cold seeping through the fabric. Karen's apology was mechanical, void of any genuine remorse. "Oh, I'm sorry about that," she said, her tone flat and indifferent. Sophia's breath caught. She dabbed at the damp fabric with a napkin, her movements slow and deliberate. She wouldn't give Karen the satisfaction of seeing her flustered. Instead, she met Karen's gaze, holding it with a quiet intensity that made the attendant falter. The man across the aisle, who had been watching the scene unfold, leaned toward her. "I saw that," he said softly. His voice was kind but firm, his eyes full of quiet outrage. "That wasn't an accident." Sophia nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "Thank you," she replied. "But I have my own way of handling this." Her resolve hardened. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every person who had been dismissed, overlooked, or undervalued. She scrolled through her contacts and selected a name. James Everett, the CEO of her airline and a trusted ally. Her fingers hovered for a moment before she pressed call. The phone call. James answered on the second ring. His voice was warm but tinged with concern as he greeted her. "Sophia, everything all right?" She wasted no time, recounting the events with crisp precision. Each detail was delivered with the calm authority of someone used to taking command. She didn't exaggerate. She didn't need to. The facts alone were damning. James's response was immediate. "I'm so sorry this happened, Sophia. This is unacceptable. I'll handle it personally." "Thank you, James," she said, her voice steady. "This isn't just about me. We need to ensure that our airline reflects the values we stand for, at every level." "I promise you, it will," James assured her. When the call ended, Sophia leaned back in her seat, her mind racing. She had set the wheels in motion, but this was only the beginning. Change required more than swift action. It required sustained effort. Confrontation on the ground. As the plane touched down and taxied to the gate, Sophia's decision crystallized. She let the other passengers disembark, remaining seated until the cabin was nearly empty. When she finally stood, her movements were deliberate, each step a statement of her unyielding resolve. In the jet bridge, Karen stood with the rest of the crew, her posture rigid and her eyes darting nervously. Beside her was James Everett, his tall frame exuding authority. His expression was a mix of apology and determination as Sophia approached. "Sophia," James began, extending a hand. "I can't express how sorry I am for what you experienced. This behavior is entirely unacceptable." Sophia nodded, her voice steady but firm. "Thank you, James, but this isn't just about me. It's about ensuring that no one else is made to feel this way." James turned to Karen, his tone sharp. "Karen, do you have anything to say for yourself?" Karen stammered, her words a tangled mess of half-apologies and excuses. Sophia raised a hand, cutting her off. "This isn't about your intent," she said calmly. "It's about the impact of your actions," and the impact was clear. James's decision was swift and decisive. Effective immediately, you are relieved of your duties. Your behavior violates everything this company stands for. Karen's face drained of color as security personnel arrived to escort her away. The scene was quiet, almost anticlimactic, but the weight of the moment lingered. It wasn't just about Karen's dismissal, it was about what it represented, a commitment to accountability and respect. The ripple effect. As Sophia walked through the terminal, the weight of the confrontation began to settle. Her steps were measured, her mind calm but reflective. She glanced at the faces of other passengers as they passed, some curious, some silently supportive. The whispers had already started to ripple through the airport, but Sophia wasn't concerned about the chatter. Her focus was on the change this moment could spark. James walked beside her, his demeanor as resolute as hers. "This will never happen again," he said firmly. "Not on my watch." "It's not just about preventing this," Sophia replied, her voice steady, but filled with purpose. "It's about creating a culture where it never even crosses someone's mind to act this way." James nodded, his respect for her palpable. "We'll start immediately." By the time Sophia reached the exit, she had already drafted a plan in her mind. This wasn't just an isolated incident. It was a symptom of a larger issue, one that required systemic change. Her goal wasn't retribution, It was transformation. She wanted her airline to be a model for inclusivity and respect, not just within the industry, but as an example for businesses everywhere. The meeting. The next morning, Sophia convened a meeting with her executive team. The conference room was filled with the quiet hum of anticipation as the team settled into their seats. Some of them had already heard about the incident. Others were about to learn. Sophia stood at the head of the table, her presence commanding but approachable. She began by recounting the events of the previous day, her tone measured but unwavering. She didn't spare details, painting a vivid picture of what had transpired. "This isn't just about one employee's behavior," she said, her gaze sweeping across the room. "It's about the culture we've allowed to exist. And that stops now." She outlined a series of initiatives aimed at overhauling the airline's policies and training programs. Mandatory diversity and inclusion training for all employees, a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination with clear consequences, a new reporting system that ensured incidents like hers wouldn't be ignored or dismissed. But Sophia didn't stop there. She proposed creating a council of employees from diverse backgrounds to advise leadership on inclusivity and equity. "We need to listen," she said, "not just to complaints but to ideas, to solutions. We need to create an environment where everyone feels valued and heard." Her team listened intently, their initial surprise giving way to understanding and agreement. By the time the meeting ended, the room was charged with a sense of purpose. They weren't just making changes to address an incident. They were laying the foundation for a new era. The public statement. Sophia knew that change couldn't happen in silence. Later that week, she released a statement addressing the incident. It was bold, transparent, and unapologetic. She didn't shy away from acknowledging the company's shortcomings, but she also outlined the steps they were taking to ensure such behavior wouldn't be tolerated. The statement resonated far beyond the airline industry. Customers, employees, and even competitors took notice. Social media lit up with messages of support, stories of similar experiences, and calls for other companies to follow suit. Sophia's decision to confront the issue head-on became a case study in leadership, accountability, and the power of one person to effect change. The broader impact. In the weeks that followed, the changes Sophia had implemented began to take root. Employees who had previously felt overlooked or undervalued found their voices. Conversations about diversity and inclusion, once relegated to the sidelines, became central to the company's mission. Sophia made it a point to meet with employees across all levels, listening to their stories and ideas. She wanted to ensure that the changes weren't just top-down but collaborative. Her willingness to engage directly with her team earned her their respect and trust. The airline industry as a whole took notice. Competitors began reevaluating their own policies, spurred by the wave of attention Sophia's actions had garnered. Industry conferences featured panels on inclusivity and equity, with Sophia often invited to speak. Her message was clear. Meaningful change requires courage, commitment, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. A moment of reflection. Months later, on another flight, Sophia reclined in her first-class seat, the hum of the engines a familiar comfort. This time, a young flight attendant approached her with a pair of headphones, her smile warm and genuine. "Here you go, Miss Carter," the attendant said. "Is there anything else I can get for you?" Sophia accepted the headphones with a smile of her own. "Thank you," she said, her tone filled with gratitude, not just for the gesture, but for what it represented. As the plane soared into the sky, Sophia gazed out the window, her heart filled with quiet resolve. She knew there was still much work to be done, but moments like these reminded her why she had fought so hard. It wasn't just about her. It was about creating a world where respect and dignity were the standard, not the exception. And she wouldn't stop until that world became a reality. Building a legacy. The weeks turned into months, and the ripples from that single flight grew into waves. Sophia Carter wasn't just changing her airline. She was rewriting the narrative of leadership and accountability. For Sophia, the incident had been a catalyst, not just for her company, but for herself. It had sparked a deeper commitment to fostering meaningful systemic change. But meaningful change wasn't just about policies and training. It was about embedding values into the DNA of an organization. Sophia knew that real transformation required time, effort, and above all, people. She began traveling across the country, meeting with teams at every level of her company. From ground crews to customer service representatives to flight attendants, Sophia made it a point to hear their stories, their struggles, and their aspirations. The Employee Summit. To take things further, Sophia organized the company's first ever Employee Inclusion Summit. The event was held at the airline's headquarters, with employees flying in from all over the world. The atmosphere buzzed with energy as hundreds gathered in a grand auditorium, the company logo shining brightly on the stage backdrop. Sophia opened the summit with a speech that resonated deeply. She stood on the stage, not as a billionaire CEO, but as someone who had faced struggles similar to those of many in the audience. "I know what it feels like to be underestimated," she began, her voice steady but powerful. "I know what it's like to fight for a seat at the table, only to be told you don't belong. That's why I'm here, not just to talk about change, but to ensure that each and every one of you feels seen, heard, and valued." Her words were met with a standing ovation, but she wasn't done. She introduced a series of initiatives that had been months in the making: mentorship programs for underrepresented employees, scholarships for aspiring pilots and aviation professionals from diverse backgrounds, and partnerships with organizations dedicated to equity and inclusion. But the most impactful part of the summit came during the breakout sessions. Employees were encouraged to share their stories in smaller, more intimate groups. Sophia joined one such session, sitting among flight attendants and ground crew members. She listened as they recounted their experiences, from moments of pride to instances of bias they had endured. One young flight attendant, Maria, shared her story of feeling invisible. "I've been here for 3 years," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "And sometimes I feel like I'm just a uniform to passengers. They don't see me. They don't know how much I care about doing my job well." Sophia leaned forward, her gaze steady. "Maria," she said, "your story is exactly why we're here. You're not just a uniform. You're the heart of this company. And it's our responsibility to make sure you never feel invisible again." A network of support. Sophia's initiatives quickly took root, creating a network of support that empowered employees to thrive. The mentorship program matched senior leaders with newer employees, fostering relationships that bridged generational and cultural gaps. The scholarship fund opened doors for individuals who had dreamed of careers in aviation but lacked the resources to pursue them. Employees began sharing their experiences more openly, knowing their voices were being heard. Sophia received letters and emails from team members who had previously felt disconnected, thanking her for making them feel valued. One letter stood out, a handwritten note from an airport baggage handler named Carlos. "I've been with this company for over 20 years, it read. "For the first time, I feel like I'm part of something bigger than just my job. Thank you for making me feel like I belong." Sophia kept the letter on her desk, a reminder of why she had taken on this fight. It wasn't just about correcting wrongs. It was about creating an environment where every person felt they mattered. Transforming the industry. The changes within Sophia's airline didn't go unnoticed. Competitors began reaching out, curious about her approach. She was invited to speak at industry conferences, where she shared her vision for a more inclusive and equitable future. Her speeches were a blend of hard truths and hope, challenging her peers to confront uncomfortable realities while inspiring them to take action. One of her most impactful talks came at the Global Aviation Summit. Standing before an audience of CEOs and executives from around the world, Sophia spoke candidly. "Diversity isn't just a box to check," she said, her voice clear and unwavering. "It's the foundation of innovation. It's the heart of customer service. It's what allows us to connect with the millions of people who step onto our planes each year. If we're not committed to inclusivity, we're not just failing our employees, we're failing our customers and ourselves." Her words were met with thunderous applause, but what mattered most to Sophia were the conversations that followed. Executives approached her, seeking advice on how to implement similar initiatives in their own companies. Slowly but surely, the industry began to shift. The personal journey. Amid all the changes she was driving, Sophia found herself reflecting on her own journey. She realized that the incident on the flight, while painful, had reignited her sense of purpose. It reminded her why she had built this company in the first place, not just to create an airline, but to create a legacy. She began journaling during her travels, documenting her thoughts and experiences. These entries later became the foundation for a book she decided to write, a memoir titled Beyond the Sky, Leading with Purpose in Turbulent Times. The book chronicled her journey from a young girl with big dreams to a CEO reshaping an industry. But more than that, it was a call to action for leaders everywhere to prioritize humanity in their pursuit of success. When the book was published, it became an instant bestseller, sparking conversations far beyond the aviation industry. Readers from all walks of life found inspiration in Sophia's story, and her influence continued to grow. A vision for the future. As the years went by, Sophia's airline became a benchmark for inclusivity and respect. Employee satisfaction soared, and the company's reputation flourished. Customers noticed the difference too. The warm smiles, the genuine care, the sense that every person, from passengers to crew, was valued. It wasn't just an airline anymore. It was a community. For Sophia, the journey was far from over. She knew that progress wasn't a destination, but a continuous process. But as she boarded yet another flight, greeted by a crew who embodied the values she had fought so hard to instill, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This wasn't just about creating a better airline. It was about proving that dignity, respect, and accountability weren't just ideals. They were powerful forces for change. Sophia Carter had set out to build an airline. What she had built instead was a movement. The seeds of a movement. As Sophia Carter's airline became a beacon of inclusivity, respect, and accountability, the effects of her leadership began to transcend the boundaries of her company. What had started as a confrontation in a first-class cabin was now a movement, touching lives and sparking conversations in industries far removed from aviation. Sophia's approach was simple yet profound. People matter. And when people are treated with dignity, they rise to meet their fullest potential. This philosophy, though deeply personal to Sophia, resonated with a world hungry for authenticity and leadership rooted in empathy. The community connection. One of Sophia's most groundbreaking initiatives was a community outreach program called Skybridge. The program was designed to connect the airline with underserved communities, offering mentorship, education, and career opportunities in aviation. Sophia believed that representation wasn't just about numbers. It was about creating pipelines for talent from all walks of life. Skybridge hosted workshops in schools across the country, where students could meet pilots, engineers, and flight attendants who shared their backgrounds and stories. These sessions weren't just about career advice. They were about planting the seeds of possibility. Sophia personally attended several of these events. One day, she found herself in a crowded gymnasium at a high school in Detroit. A young girl with bright eyes and braids approached her hesitantly. "Are you really the CEO?" the girl asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. Sophia smiled warmly. "Yes, I am. What's your name?" "Jada," the girl replied, her cheeks flushing with excitement. "I want to be a pilot someday, but I don't know if I can." Sophia knelt to meet Jada's gaze. "Do you know what I wanted to be when I was your age?" she asked. Jada shook her head. "A CEO," Sophia said. "And people told me I couldn't. But here's the secret. You don't have to listen to anyone who doesn't believe in you. You just have to believe in yourself." Jada's face lit up, and Sophia handed her a business card. "When you're ready, you call me," Sophia said. "I'll make sure you get your chance." Moments like this fueled Sophia's drive. She wasn't just building a company. She was building dreams. Global recognition. Sophia's impact didn't go unnoticed on a global scale. Media outlets clamored to interview her, and her face graced the covers of major magazines. She was invited to speak at the United Nations, where she addressed the intersection of business and social responsibility. In her speech, she said, "We often measure success by profit margins and market shares, but true success lies in the lives we touch. Businesses don't operate in a vacuum. They exist in communities, among people, and it's our responsibility as leaders to ensure those people thrive." Her words struck a chord, and the standing ovation that followed was a testament to the universality of her message. Sophia was no longer just a leader in aviation. She was a leader of people, a test of strength. But with success came challenges. Not everyone welcomed the changes Sophia implemented. Some accused her of being too political, arguing that her focus on inclusivity detracted from the company's bottom line. Sophia faced these criticisms head-on, confident in her vision. At a shareholders' meeting, one particularly vocal critic questioned her strategy. "Do you really believe this focus on social issues is good for business?" he asked, his tone laced with skepticism. Sophia's response was measured but firm. "I don't just believe it. I know it," she said. "Since we implemented these changes, employee satisfaction is at an all-time high, customer loyalty has increased, and our profits reflect that. But even if they didn't, I would still stand by these decisions because doing what's right isn't just good business. It's good humanity." The room erupted in applause, silencing the critic. Sophia had once again proven that integrity and success were not mutually exclusive. A personal triumph. Amid the whirlwind of her professional life, Sophia made time for herself and her family. She had always been a private person, but she understood the importance of sharing her journey with those she loved. Her parents, who had sacrificed so much to support her education, became her anchors. Her siblings, who had always cheered her on from the sidelines, were her biggest champions. One evening, as Sophia sat with her mother on the porch of her childhood home, she reflected on how far she had come. "Did you ever think I'd be here?" Sophia asked, her voice soft. Her mother smiled, her eyes brimming with pride. "I always knew you would," she said. "But what makes me prouder isn't where you are. It's how you got there." Those words stayed with Sophia, grounding her in moments of doubt and inspiring her in moments of triumph. The future unfolds. As Sophia's airline continued to flourish, she began to think about the next chapter of her journey. She launched the Carter Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to advancing equity in education and business. The foundation funded scholarships, mentorship programs, and initiatives aimed at breaking down systemic barriers. Sophia also turned her attention to writing. Her memoir, Beyond the Sky, was followed by a second book, Leading with Heart, a guide for leaders looking to balance compassion with ambition. Both books became bestsellers, cementing her legacy as a thought leader. The celebration. Years later, the airline celebrated its 25th anniversary with a grand gala. Employees, customers, and partners gathered to honor the company's journey and the woman who had shaped its identity. Sophia stood at the center of it all, humbled by the outpouring of gratitude and admiration. As the evening came to a close, a young woman approached her. It was Jada, now a pilot with the airline. She wore her uniform with pride, her eyes shining with gratitude. "You kept your promise," Jada said, her voice trembling. "Thank you for believing in me." Sophia smiled, her heart swelling with emotion. "You believed in yourself," she said. "I just helped you see it." A legacy of light. As the night ended, Sophia looked out at the room filled with people whose lives had been touched by her leadership. She realized that her journey was never just about her. It was about the countless others who had walked through doors she had opened. Her legacy wasn't just the airline, or the foundation, or the books. It was the idea that respect, dignity, and courage could change the world. And in that moment, Sophia knew she had built something that would outlast her, a legacy of light that would continue to guide others long after she was gone. The power of one, the strength of many. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the skyline in hues of gold and violet as Sophia Carter stood on the rooftop terrace of her headquarters. The world below buzzed with the life of the city she had grown to love. But her gaze wasn't on the view. It was on the horizon, where the future awaited. Sophia had come a long way, but the work was far from over. Her airline's transformation had sparked a ripple effect across industries, yet systemic change was never a one-time effort. It was a commitment, a daily decision to challenge norms, rebuild foundations, and push forward even when progress felt slow. This realization propelled Sophia into a new phase of her journey, one where her influence extended beyond the corporate sphere and into the hearts of people striving for their own breakthroughs. Empowering the next generation. Sophia's Skybridge initiative, which had connected underserved communities to opportunities in aviation, expanded globally. New chapters opened in South Africa, Brazil, and India, each tailored to the unique challenges faced by local communities. The program wasn't just about education. It was about empowerment. Workshops were held not only for students but also for parents, educators, and community leaders to foster a culture of support. Sophia often visited these chapters, each trip leaving a profound impact on her. In Johannesburg, she met a group of young girls who had just completed a flight simulation program. Their excitement was infectious, their dreams as vast as the sky. One girl, Amara, tugged at Sophia's sleeve. "Is it true you built an airline?" she asked, her eyes wide with wonder. "Yes, it is," Sophia replied, kneeling to meet her at eye level. "I want to build one too," Amara declared confidently. Sophia smiled. "You can, and when you do, I'll be your first passenger." Moments like these reaffirmed Sophia's belief in the power of representation. Seeing someone who looked like them succeed made young people believe they could do it too. The Carter Collective. Recognizing the importance of mentorship, Sophia established the Carter Collective, a digital platform that connected aspiring leaders with mentors across industries. Unlike traditional mentorship programs, this platform emphasized mutual growth, where mentors learned from mentees just as much as they imparted wisdom. The platform also hosted webinars, interactive workshops, and forums where participants could share their experiences and challenges. One popular series, Fail Forward, featured leaders from diverse backgrounds discussing their failures and the lessons they had learned. Sophia herself kicked off the series, sharing a deeply personal story about a business venture that had nearly bankrupted her in her early days. "It's not failure that defines us," she said during the session. "It's what we choose to do after." Her vulnerability resonated with thousands, and the Carter Collective quickly became a hub for innovation and inspiration. A global movement. Sophia's influence began to transcend her airline, and she found herself at the helm of a global movement. Her speeches were no longer just about leadership but about the human condition, about empathy, equity, and empowerment. At an international conference on women in leadership, Sophia delivered a keynote address that became one of her most famous speeches. Standing before an audience of 10,000, she spoke about the silent battles many women, particularly women of color, face every day. "We are often told to work twice as hard to be seen as half as good," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "But what they don't tell you is that we are already more than enough. It's not about proving our worth. It's about claiming the space that's always been ours." The audience erupted into applause, and for days, social media buzzed with quotes and clips from her speech. Sophia's words became a rallying cry for women across the globe. Facing adversity. Despite her successes, Sophia wasn't immune to adversity. Critics continued to question her methods, accusing her of prioritizing social issues over profit. She faced legal challenges, public scrutiny, and the relentless pressure of maintaining her company's growth. One particularly difficult moment came when a competitor launched a smear campaign, accusing her of using the airline's resources for personal gain. The media frenzy was intense, with headlines questioning her integrity. Sophia's response was calm but firm. She held a press conference, standing alongside her executive team and employees who spoke about the impact of her leadership. "This company is not just a business to me. It's a community," she said, "and communities thrive on trust, transparency, and accountability. That's what we've built, and that's what we'll continue to uphold. The allegations were ultimately proven false, but the experience strengthened Sophia's resolve. It reminded her that leadership wasn't about avoiding challenges, but rising to meet them with courage and clarity. A personal transformation. Amid the whirlwind of her public and professional life, Sophia found herself on a personal journey of growth. She began practicing mindfulness, carving out moments of stillness in her otherwise hectic schedule. Yoga became her sanctuary, a way to reconnect with herself and reflect on her path. One evening, during a retreat in the mountains, Sophia wrote a letter to her younger self. In it, she acknowledged the fears and doubts that had once held her back, but celebrated the resilience that had carried her forward. "You were always stronger than you thought," she wrote, "and the world was always waiting for you to step into your power." The letter, though private, became a source of comfort and strength for Sophia. It reminded her of the importance of self-compassion in a life dedicated to helping others. A vision realized. As Sophia approached the 30th anniversary of her airline, she reflected on the legacy she had built. The company had grown into a global powerhouse, but its heart remained the same, a commitment to people, purpose, and progress. To celebrate the milestone, Sophia announced the launch of Sky Horizons, an initiative aimed at addressing climate change within the aviation industry. The program focused on developing sustainable fuels, reducing carbon emissions, and reimagining air travel for a greener future. Leadership isn't just about the present, Sophia said at the launch event. It's about leaving the world better than we found it. The final flight. Years later, as Sophia prepared to step down from her role as CEO, she took one last flight as a passenger on her airline. The crew, aware of her legacy, treated her with warmth and reverence. As the plane ascended, Sophia gazed out the window, her heart filled with gratitude. A young flight attendant approached her with a pair of headphones. "Thank you for everything, Miss Carter," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "You've changed so many lives, including mine." Sophia smiled, accepting the headphones. "Thank you," she replied. "But remember, the power to change lives doesn't stop with me. It's in all of us." As the plane soared above the clouds, Sophia felt a profound sense of peace. She had spent her life building something that mattered, something that would endure. And as the horizon stretched endlessly before her, she knew that the best was yet to come, for her company, and for the world she had worked so hard to inspire. The final chapter. A legacy of purpose. The years that followed Sophia Carter's final flight were filled with moments of quiet reflection and continued action. Though she had stepped down as CEO, she remained deeply involved in causes close to her heart. Her foundation grew into one of the world's leading organizations for equity, education, and environmental sustainability. It wasn't just her name that carried weight, it was the impact she left behind. A life well lived. Sophia spent her days mentoring young leaders, writing, and occasionally surprising audiences with her appearances at events. She embraced her role as an elder stateswoman of change, always reminding others that true leadership was not about power but about service. One of her most poignant public statements came during a university commencement address. "Life will test you. It will challenge your beliefs, your patience, and your courage. But in those moments, you have a choice, to shrink or to rise. And let me tell you, the view is always better when you rise." The students erupted in applause, but Sophia's words weren't just meant for them. They were a reminder to herself, too. She had faced those tests, and each time, she had chosen to rise. The lesson: dignity is the foundation of progress. Sophia's story was never just about an airline. It was about the universal truth that dignity and respect are the foundations upon which true progress is built. Her journey had proven that no matter how small an act of injustice might seem, it's worth addressing, not with anger but with purpose. In interviews and speeches, she often reflected on the moment that started it all, the flight where she chose to act. "It wasn't about headphones," she would say. It was about the principle that no one should have to fight for basic respect. That's a principle worth fighting for, no matter the cost. A final gift. As Sophia entered her 80s, she decided to leave one final mark on the world. She endowed a fund called the Horizon Initiative, dedicated to supporting leaders from marginalized communities in creating innovative solutions to global challenges. The fund was her way of ensuring that the next generation would have the resources and support she often had to fight for herself. At the launch event for the initiative, Sophia stood before a crowd of young entrepreneurs, activists, and dreamers. Her voice, though softer with age, carried the same conviction it always had. "Your dreams are valid," she said. "Your voices matter, and the world needs your courage. You are the architects of the future. Build it with love, with purpose, and with unshakable belief in what's possible." A world change. When Sophia Carter passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 89, the world paused to remember her. Tributes poured in from every corner of the globe, from CEOs and world leaders to everyday people whose lives she had touched. Her story became a testament to the power of one individual to spark change. But more importantly, it became a reminder that change doesn't happen in isolation. It's the collective effort of people inspired to do better, to be better, and to demand better. The lasting lesson. Sophia's legacy wasn't just her airline, her foundation, or her books. It was the idea that everyone, no matter their background or circumstances, has the power to make a difference. She proved that dignity is not a privilege but a right, and that when we uphold that truth, we unlock the potential for greatness in ourselves and others. As her memoir, Beyond the Sky, became required reading in schools and universities, one quote stood out, etched into the hearts of readers. "Respect is the first step toward change. When we honor the dignity of every individual, we open the door to a world where everyone has a chance to soar." And so, Sophia Carter's story ended as it began, not with fanfare, but with quiet, determined action. A life lived with purpose, a legacy of light, and a lesson the world would never forget. Every choice we make has the power to transform not just our lives, but the lives of those around us. This concludes the story. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope you found it enjoyable. If you did, please consider liking the video and sharing it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell for more captivating stories. Have a great day.